We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including plenty of offseason trade speculation that we expect to continue here throughout the next few weeks. Today, we're looking at teams like the St. Louis Blues, the Vancouver Canucks, Boston Bruins, the Seattle Kraken, the San Jose Sharks, as well as the Penguins, and a few other teams, including Columbus. Plus, we have a bunch of signings today, including a big one in Winnipeg with Gabe Vilardi. The Ducks have signed Drew Helleson. Plus, we have a few other signings as well. We're going to take a look at the latest and top UFA remaining Jack Roslovic. Big update on the Ottawa Senators, new arena project, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss in today's video. I want to start things off first by acknowledging another longtime NHL veteran has announced their retirement, and it's longtime NHL goalie Yaroslav Halak. Halak had a heck of a career, and he really bounced around a lot here towards the end, but he really was an under-the-radar, one of the more underrated goalies, I think, of his era. He retires having played 581 games, has 295 wins, a .915 career save percentage, which is pretty incredible, really, if you think about it. I mean, obviously, he's got started with Montreal. I know there was a point where he and Carey Price basically came up around the same time, came up together, and Montreal was kind of in a spot where they were forced to kind of pick between them eventually, and they ended up sticking with Price. Obviously, I think they made the right decision. I mean, as much as Halak's had a great career, I don't know that, there's a tough argument to be made that he was better than Price. I mean, there were times, though, for sure, that he was pretty darn good. And he's, right there in a lot of ways you could compare the two. But thankfully, Montreal had two great goaltenders. They both went on to have great careers. Ultimately, Halak spent a bunch of time in St. Louis, where he was very successful. The Islanders, he had a good run there. The Rangers and a few other teams as well. Just all in all, like I said, one of the more underappreciated, under the radar, really solid goalies of his era, has called her quits. But a solid career by Jaro Halak. So congrats to him on a great career, and best of luck with whatever is next for him. As I mentioned, we've got a bunch of signings today, some big ones as well, including a couple of Winnipeg. We'll start with Anaheim, who have signed young defenseman Drew Helleson. He gets a 2-year contract, $1.1 million per season. So, of course, Helleson was a RFA D-man, put up 13 points in 56 games last year. Not getting a ton of offense, obviously is not really his style here. But Helleson is, a pretty promising young D who the Ducks obviously are fond of. He'll continue to develop and see what he kind of grows into. So this is a pretty low-risk bridge deal to see, like I said, how he can continue to grow his game. And the Ducks have a lot of good young defensemen there, so certainly, long term, there's going to be a few that probably end up getting moved out if they end up being quality D-man. So obviously, there's going to be lots of competition there, which is good for players like him to continue working on their game. A few other smaller signings here as well, and then we'll jump into the bigger one afterwards. But former NHLer, well, more of a minor leaguer, but Chase Prisky, who was involved most recently with the Capitals and Hershey Bears. I believe he spent time in the Hurricanes organization as well. His leaving North America and his signing in the KHL, so he won't be in North America next year. The Ottawa Senators have signed RFA forward Xavier Bourgault. Bourgault's first year in the Sens organization was last year, after arriving from trade from the Edmonton Oilers, where they swapped a couple of prospects, Bourgault for Robbie Harventi. So he gets a 1-year, 2-way deal, $775 at the NHL level, $90K for the American Hockey League, which is likely where he's going to play. It's hard to imagine Bourgault. He's not going to make the team out of training camp. There's no doubt about that. But if he plays well, he could be a call-up option to get some games in. We've also seen the Winnipeg Jets make a couple of signings. One with RFA right winger Parker Ford. He gets a 2-year contract. It's a 2-way deal as well, but it does change from year to year. Year 1 to the league minimum, $775 at the NHL level, $125K at the American Hockey League level, and a total guaranteed amount of $150,000. The second year goes up $850 at the NHL level, $250 at the American Hockey League level, and a total guaranteed amount of $300K. So that's a pretty good lucrative contract for Parker Ford, who's most likely not going to be a regular NHL player, at least not right away over time. I guess he's trying to work towards that, but this is a nice payday for him in the minors should he end up spending the bulk of the time down there. Now, the other big signing today was the Jets avoiding arbitration and coming to terms with one of their top players in Gabe Vilardi. Gabe Vilardi signs a 6-year contract at $7.5 million per season. I think this is a fantastic deal. Obviously, the fact that Vilardi had filed for arbitration was mild concern, but as I said, when we went through all the ARB cases, or the ARB filings, I should say, when they first happened a couple of weeks back, I said most of these are not going to end up in arbitration. They usually don't. Usually 80 to 90% of cases are resolved on their own. And that's ideally what you want as well. But really, I think this is more than fair. In fact, I would say you could probably call this team friendly, or at least has really good odds of being team friendly within the first year. Obviously, last year was really good for Vilardi. He's expected to continue being a top line player. Vilardi's emergence and arrival too is kind of what was responsible for Nick Ehlers' departure. I know Ehlers, I don't think he minded playing in Winnipeg. I don't think it was really a case. It sounded like it was a combination of things that caused Ehlers to go. But part of it was, I think, that he wanted an opportunity to be consistently in the top line. And obviously, Connor and Scheifele have been playing a lot with Vilardi since he's been there, and it's been a dynamic line. So, of course, now Scheifele's locked up long-term. Now Vilardi's locked up long-term. The next one will be Kyle Connor. So, obviously, he's going to be, interesting to see if they can get an extension done with him. I know there are a lot of fans anxiously waiting that one, especially in Detroit. Obviously, being from Michigan, I think they're hopeful that he'll want to head home if he leaves Winnipeg, but it's a little early to say. We haven't really heard anything on that as of yet, but the Jets locking up some players for sure is good news for them after losing Ehlers. I think Vilardi, like I said, this contract's going to age exceptionally well with the cap going up the way it's expected to, and with his production being as good as it's been so far and likely going to continue to get better. I think this will be a contract that the team looks upon as being very team friendly here through the majority of the term. So great signing for Vilardi and the Winnipeg Jets. Great job to Kevin Cheveldayoff and the staff there. Of course, the main remaining member now, the Jets, the most notable one left is Dylan Sandberg, and there is some speculation that they are, I'm not sure how close, but they're getting closer, and they're working on a long-term contract. So I would suspect Sandberg's deal to be in that 5 to 7 year range as well. So we'll see what happens there. Now, one player who's not signed as of yet and remains right up near the top of the list here for players that are still looking for work is Jack Roslovic. Now, it seems as though that there's a couple of teams he's been linked to that have been making moves, and I do wonder if some of the moves we've seen will kind of influence where he ends up. But there's also, expectation here that there's other moves to be made, so to speak. But the couple of teams we've heard about Roslovic is Toronto and Vancouver, and of course we've seen them actually make a trade together yesterday, sending Dakota Joshua from Vancouver to Toronto. Now, Toronto, of course, like I said, with the Mitch Marner cap savings from losing him, they've signed and brought in through sign and trade a bunch of players. So they don't have a lot of space left, and I do kind of wonder here if they've taken on enough scoring. I don't know that Brad Treliving is really done here. I know they're still rumored to wanting to be moved guys like Calle Yarncroke or David Kampf, which would give them some more money, which could free up room to bring in Roslovic. But I mean, unless they want Joshua more than Roslovic, I'm not really sure the order of operations here if you're them. Now, from Vancouver's perspective, you move Joshua, which appears to be more of a cap dump. They signed him to a 4-year deal. 1 year into it, they've already decided they want to abandon that plan and move on. And ideally, they want to add somebody who can play center. Roslovic can do that. He's had some good seasons lately. Is he a number 2 center? I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, there's times when he's shown he can be that, and there's other times when you're like, well, maybe that's a little too much expectation for him. So either way, he's a good player, and you can move him to the wing if need be. But Roslovic is, like I said, he's a player that they're both those teams appear to be targeting. And you wonder if the other moves that they've made here, like, has Vancouver already done their move to sign him? You think if that was the case, it would already be done. So I don't know that that's a slam dunk. I mean, they're in a position now that they could, but it's believed that they're also looking at some trade candidates as well. I don't know if Vancouver's done dealing. I would say probably not. There is some players that they're looking at. A couple believed to be Jared McCann in Seattle, of course, very familiar with Vancouver. McCann very well could be a player that got away from them early and has had great success elsewhere. I mean, obviously, a couple of years ago was a 40-goal scorer in Seattle. Has kind of cooled down a little bit since, but it seems like he should be theoretically a pretty consistent 25-goal guy at least. And even if that's, where he ends up being on a more consistent basis for what he's earning, that's pretty valuable, right? And he can play center and wing. So, again, I mean, he makes sense for Vancouver. He also makes sense for other teams. But McCann also has been linked to a variety of teams for trade, including Vancouver, including Toronto, including Ottawa, and a few others. So, I don't know. Like I said before, I know Ottawa's connection there. I don't think it's nearly as urgent. Teams like Toronto and Vancouver have more of a need, so I can see there being a more likely landing spot. However, Pavel Zacha is another name in Boston. There is still speculation that the Bruins could move Zacha. I honestly don't know that the Bruins are going to be better this year. I think that they're content taking another step back for the opportunity to really try to move ahead the year after. For one, I think they really like the 2026 draft, and there's some high-end talent there that they can get their hands on, which will help with what they've already landed in 2025. And then on top of that, the free agent crop has potential to be way stronger as well. So between the cap space, a high draft pick, and then I think they're kind of looking for more towards a 26-27 type of rebound season. At least that's the way that's my take on where they're at. So we'll see. But, Zacha and McCann are out there for sure. They've been linked to the Canucks. Plus they're looking at Roslovic, so not really clear what direction they're going to go here. So they have a variety of things they're working on in that front. Now, as I mentioned as well, we also had word today that the Senators are getting a little bit closer to finalizing their deal with the NCC to get their land, to get their new arena project underway. Now, we know it's still going to be a while. Obviously, they don't even own the land yet. They have an agreement in principle to buy the land, but a lot of the issues is that the NCC has been moving really slow to determine the official purchase price, because the land needs a lot of work, a lot of remediation work and stuff, and they've been working with them to kind of go through the environmental assessment and a whole bunch of parts of that is involved with determining the sale price so they can move forward with the transaction. Earlier this year, we had heard that they're aiming for the end of 2025. I mean, essentially, since Michael Andlauer's bought the team and they took over that process, they've been, it's been moving forward, but kind of really baby steps. And then, of course, we had the big update. When was it? Just a few months ago, that they technically had an agreement with the NCC. They made a big announcement. But the next step was determining the sale price of the land, and then completing the transaction so that there's, then they have to do the work before they can even get a shovel in the ground. So you're still looking at, like I said, you're probably looking at about a 4-year process, because I would suspect it's going to be, we're 2025 now. It would probably, if they can get this wrapped up here soonish, you're still looking at probably, I think, close to a year to get the shovels in the ground to get going. And then probably, 2.5, 3 years before you're going to have a building. So I think you're still probably looking at a best case scenario 2029, 2030 season or something along those lines. I mean, you never know. It could even be the season after that. Hard to say, but there's a big step that could happen here soon. Instead of the end of the year, they're now saying that there's a possibility that things might be moving along fast enough that they might be able to be fast-tracked to be approved at the next board meeting for the NCC, which is scheduled for the third week of September. So at that point, they might be able to finalize the transaction so they can start doing all the things they need to do to prep the land to get started on building. So it's a big step, and once they can clear that, there'll be a little bit more in the Sens' control. So big hurdle coming here, and hopefully that'll be sorted out soon. Of course, we know that the Columbus Blue Jackets forward Yegor Chinnikov has made a trade request. We talked about that yesterday. Did see some updates from NHL insider Dave Pagnotta saying that because we know the Blue Jackets were heavily involved with the Noah Dobson trade talks, and they were including Chinnikov in their offer to the Islanders. So this is not, it's new to the public that Chinnikov wants a trade, but clearly they've known about this for a little while, and that was somebody that they were trying to include in a deal for that. Now, of course, we know that they've been pretty active in the D market trying to land a high-end defenseman. When it comes to Dobson, though, I think, to be honest, that they had a deal that was just as good as far as their offer to the Rangers or the Islanders. I mean, obviously, Chinnikov, good player, right? If you look at what Montreal ended up giving, the 2 mid-round, first-round picks, I mean, clearly the Islanders put those to good use. But, sounds like it was going to be Chinnikov, because Columbus had multiple first-rounders as well. So they're going to get one of the first-rounders from Columbus, Chinnikov, and I think another prospect is what was on the table from them. So really, if you can get a good prospect D, a good prospect forward, and at least one mid-round, first-round pick, I mean, that's not a bad offer. And then the big hiccup with all of that, though, was that Dobson didn't want to go to Columbus. So, I mean, even though he didn't technically have say to block the trade, he does have leverage by saying, I'm not going to sign a contract with them, so don't trade me there. So he agreed to terms. And I think they were even offering more money on Dobson on the contract extension part of it. But Dobson won at Montreal, so that's what Dobson got. And that's the deal that went through. So the Jackets had already had some conversations around Chinnikov. Those continue now. So we'll see what else they do. But they've been so involved in the D market. My suspicion is that if they can find a trade for Chinnikov to honor his request, that it's going to hopefully for them come in the form of getting a pretty good defenseman back. I mean, he is a younger forward that has some upside. They obviously would have to likely include something else with him, but they can probably put him in a package to intrigue teams to move a good defenseman. So it's hard to say who that D-man's going to be at this point. Some of the names they were linked to previously have obviously gone to other places like Dobson. They ended up bringing back Provorov, but I believe they're still looking for an upgrade on that back end if they can find it with this trade. So we'll see what happens there. Elliot Friedman had made some comments as well on Jordan Kyrou, and we've also got comments from Frank Saravalli. Frank is convinced that the Blues are still what he refers to as, this was in the last couple of days here, saying they're still not only taking calls on Kyrou, but motivated to move the contract. So, there are some that are convinced that the Blues are really wanting to do this, and there's others that are convinced that it's more of a reactive thing, that they're just kind of taking calls, that more of the aggressive part of this was done before the no trade clause kicked in, because they just really want to gauge the market and see, okay, if we want to consider this before he has his protection, what is out there? What could we do? What would it make us better? Do we like the offers? Whatever. And now it's more of a case of, we know that he has the control, but have they talked to him about what teams he would go to? I don't know, right? So anyways, there's still belief that they're motivated to do this if they can find the right deal. And Friedman had mentioned an interesting tidbit on his last podcast episode, saying that Seattle was a team earlier in the process that were involved in the West. We've heard a lot about Montreal primarily, but the Kraken are a team that would make a ton of sense as too. I mean, we know they're kind of starving for star power. I think Kyrou has at times been a star player in the NHL and can still be. He's got incredible speed, incredible offensive abilities, really talented. Is he a huge star? No, but I mean, he's a pretty good star player. Compared to what they have, he could be first line type of guy. There's speculation that they would move on from guys like McCann or Schwartz, who are obviously not having in some cases here, a lot of term in their contract. If they can move out some veterans and get a guy like him, why wouldn't they do that, right? So, again, it's hard to say what the Blues would want. We know it's not going to be a cheap price tag, and maybe the reason that hasn't happened is because of who they would want from Seattle. So, again, just another team to watch in that process. The Kraken are one of the few Western teams that have been confirmed to have serious interest and at some points have had some conversations with the Blues on that player. Of course, Nick Kypreos on his latest trade bait board here in the last couple of days, some updates on Pittsburgh that we haven't discussed yet, basically saying that Kyle Dubas has some pretty high price tags set for all of his veterans, including Erik Karlsson, Brian Rust, and Rickard Rakell. There is some belief that the Los Angeles Kings are one of the main teams in on Rakell, and that they're looking for a quality prospect and a quality pick. Or maybe not prospect, but a young player, like either somebody who's not in the NHL as of yet or just a little bit of experience. So one of the names that had come up from LA for looking to maybe make some upgrades was Alex Turcotte. It doesn't sound like Alex Turcotte would be nearly enough to get this kind of a deal done. I think they're going to want Turcotte, maybe a first or another prospect too. Like the Penguins are not going to be giving Rakell away without a pretty serious haul. They like what he brings. I think he can be quite, a good offensive producer, and then his contract makes it even more valuable for what you get from him. So we'll see on that front if that's going to really lead to something. But Rakell to the Kings is a name and scenario that's apparently been out there as well. I know the Sharks are still working on a variety of things. It seems like they have a lot of players. They have a lot of things that we've seen them do here in recent weeks. Still more moves to come, I think, from Mike Greer and company. But there's still a lot of chatter around Mario Ferraro. There's still a lot of belief that there's a good chance he'll be dealt this offseason and he'll be packaged with something to land probably as best, whatever assets they can get that are great for the team's future. I mean, if you look at what they have, they kind of need or want a variety of things. But if they can get a little bit younger, would be preferable, clearly, with what they're building. They need some players that kind of fit their timeline here. So Ferraro is still a name getting a lot of attention out there. Evgeny Kuznetsov still trying to make an NHL return as well. Just seen a post from the agent of Yegor Chinnikov, actually, Shumi Babayev, who doesn't have a ton of clients in the NHL, but he does represent Chinnikov, and now he's representing Kuznetsov as well. And he made a social media post, obviously talking about the Chinnikov trade requests that came yesterday, and today he's posting about Kuznetsov, saying that he's now representing him here for his North American contract needs, and that he's already, even though he's only been repping him a short time, that he's already spoken to a number of teams that have expressed some interest, and that he is determined that there should be a good opportunity for Kuznetsov to play in North America, and they feel like that's what he wants, and that's what's in the best case scenario for him to be able to figure out here. So we'll see where he ends up. Of course, he didn't mention any teams that have expressed interest. We had heard about Montreal, but of course we know that's not happening at this point. Otherwise, we know Kuznetsov himself said he wasn't interested in going back to Washington. He would go to Carolina. But I know I thought he might sign closer to league minimum, but I know Dave Pagnotta was saying he believed he was looking for at least $1 million and maybe closer to $2 million. So I'm not sure what the contract's going to end up being. I suspect there's been some lowball offers, which is why he hasn't signed anything here as of yet. But Kuznetsov now is a new agent and is definitely still pushing for that NHL return. Like I said before, he made comments suggesting that he feels like he has something here to prove. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.